The Lifestyle Show, presented by Selina MacKenzie.
Now, Jack and Eve is the story of two suffragettes in love and at war. They met in 1908, they lived together and became public faces of the suffragette movement, enduring prison and doing everything they could for the cause. Well, our first guest today has written their story. Welcome to the show, Wendy Moore.
Hi, Selina. Lovely to join you.
Lovely to have you on the show. So let me get this right. So Eve is Evelina Haverfield and Jack is actually Vera Home.
Yes, that's correct. So they were known as Jack and Eve. Eve, Evelina Haverfield, she was born into the English aristocracy. So she led a very privileged, wealthy, luxurious life, whereas Jack, who was born Vera Home, she grew up in a much more sort of modest middle-class family.
I believe she was a jobbing actress, Jack?
Yeah, Jack. They were both incredible characters, both very different from each other. Jack was very outgoing and gregarious, and from the age of 18, she went on the stage to make a living for herself. So she was in pantomimes and choruses, but what she most enjoyed was doing cross-dressing roles. So she put on male costume and appeared in roles impersonating men, and that's how she got her name. She did. She played a character called Jack, and she took the name Jack.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. And am I right in thinking that she worked for Emmeline Pankhurst?
Indeed. So both of them were suffragettes, both active, both went to prison for the cause and smashed windows and took part in demonstrations. But Jack, she was a chauffeur, official chauffeur to Emmeline Pankhurst, the leader of the suffragettes, which not only meant that she drove thousands of miles to take suffragette leaders on tours to speak at public meetings, but she had to fix the car herself as well. And she looked amazing in her chauffeur's uniform. A lot of people would think that she was male, which she revelled in that. So she absolutely loved this role.
Have you found photos of them?
Indeed. So really that's what inspired me to write the book initially. I saw a picture of Jack in her chauffeur's uniform next to this wonderful old car, grinning broadly. And I just thought she just looks such a fascinating and interesting person. So that's what inspired me. She did keep photographs. She took photographs herself, and she kept diaries all her life. So there's this amazing store of diaries which partly discreetly describe her antics and in particular her love affairs with women.
Yeah, because back then it wasn't really known so much, was it? And I was reading that she was a bit of a one, wasn't she, Jack? She was a bit of a... she had a few lovers, let's say, while she was with Eve.
Yeah, yes. So they were devoted to each other all their lives, always completely a couple. But Jack in particular did like to have dalliances with other women. So she had various affairs, relationships. She lived with other women at times, but her first love was always Eve. And they lived together for quite a long time in as a married couple, essentially, in a place called Peace Cottage. We know about their relationship because there's an inventory which describes the double bed they had, which Jack carved with their initials on either side. But like a lot of lesbian women at the time, they were more or less invisible. A lot of women lived together for various reasons, financial or otherwise. And people didn't really take much notice of women living together. And so although they didn't try to conceal their relationship at all, most people just thought they were very good friends.
Yeah, as long as they weren't being overly demonstrative out and about, then I guess people would just think they could be sisters or, like you say, for financial reasons.
Yeah, indeed, yes.
And am I right that Eve was quite a bit older than Jack?
Yeah, so Eve was 14 years older. She'd been married twice and she had 2 sons. So she'd had a more conventional lifestyle in that sense, although she was also very intrepid. When her first husband died, she left her 2 sons with her mother. and she went off traveling on her own for 10 months to Mexico and America, where she learnt to shoot a rifle and smoked a pipe in an opium den. So she was, a real live wire at the same time.
Yeah, they sound like characters. And did they meet in the movement? Is that how they met?
Yes, they met in 1908 in the suffragette movement and became very much kindred spirits. So there are lots of photographs of them together. They were always seen together. They were in demonstrations together. They rode on horseback together as marshals for lots of parades. So they were a very well-known couple within the movement.
And did they stay in England or did they travel?
Well, before the war, they were pretty much in England. But when the war changed everything, when the First World War began, they dropped everything. Eve, within 2 days, had set up an organisation to recruit women to help with the war effort, which attracted thousands of women who took on the jobs that men had originally done so the men could go to the front. She founded another organisation to recruit women to train to shoot guns in the event of an invasion. She thought that women would be able to defend Britain's shores. But they really wanted to be in the thick of the action. So after doing that on the home front for a year, they decided to go to the front themselves. So they joined the Scottish Women's Hospitals organisation, which took women's all women medical units to France and to Serbia to help the Allies. So they actually went to Serbia in 1915.
It must have been appalling conditions.
Absolutely horrific. So Serbia had... basically, that's how the war began. Serbia had been invaded by Austria, so they had been devastated by this invasion, which they'd managed to push back, but that had left this horrific typhus epidemic. So these women arrived, set up hospitals. Some of them were camp hospitals near to the front line. Eve was running. She set up and ran hospitals under canvas to treat the soldiers. And Jack was driving an ambulance. So they were really in the middle of the action there.
Yeah, very much on the front line. It seems like they proved that women could do everything that men could do.
That was what they believed. They completely believed women were entirely capable of doing everything that a man could do. So they liked to dress like men, really. I mean, especially in the war, they wore uniforms. They were quite happy to be mistaken for men. They were happy to dig trenches, put up hospitals, drive ambulances, shoulder a gun. So there were various instances when they became under threat, and Eve would take her revolver, which she carried with her all the time, and threaten them. So they were just up for anything, really.
And what happened, Wendy? I don't want to do any spoilers, but did they survive the war?
Yes, they did. So they were in Serbia for a while. They were taken prisoners of war, but they managed to get released. And instead of just, enjoying their freedom again, they then went off to Russia and Romania, where they were in even more danger, running hospitals and driving ambulances under attack from bombs and really right up to the front line, ferrying the wounded soldiers back to hospitals run by women. So that was incredibly dangerous work, and it's a miracle they survived that. Their relationship didn't survive completely intact because I think the war and the fact that Eve lost one of her sons, I think, contributed to the relationship fracturing. But as soon as the war ended, she went back to Serbia to help with the Red Cross to provide medicines and food for the people there. And as soon as Eve called Jack, she went over to help her. So they were both running an orphanage in Serbia when, sadly, in 1920, Eve died. So Jack was utterly devastated and bereft by that.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's a proper love story.
It's a love story. It's a drama. It's a thriller. it's got sort of
history,
comedy as well. So it was a pleasure to write it.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I'm glad you mentioned, actually, I think you said Eve's son, because presumably she had children or her son from her first marriage.
She had, yes, 2 sons from her first marriage, one of whom survived. And so there are descendants now in Canada.
And did you manage to talk to them?
Yeah, I'm in touch with relatives from both sides of the family. So Jack, obviously, she didn't have children, but her brother did. So there are descendants. And today, that Jack and Eve are really war heroes in Serbia. So their relatives sometimes go over there as well. So they're very well known in the countries where they were helped.
It's lovely. I've done a few of these interviews recently about the lesser known heroes. We all know the names, like we mentioned, Emmeline Pankhurst. But, I've never heard of these people, and they should be celebrated and congratulated.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so much of women's history is forgotten about. So I think it's really important to tell their story. And especially because they are role models for us today. They were defying convention. They were living openly as lesbians. They were doing everything that women, they believe women could do. So I think they are really inspiring people.
And is this your genre, Wendy? I know you're a freelance journalist, but you've also written other non-fiction books. Is it normally this sort of genre?
Yes, indeed. I think I've been on talk radio before talking about one of my previous books, in fact.
What was your previous one?
Well, the previous one before this was called Endell Street. And
I do remember it. Yeah, I do.
That was also women in the First World War who ran a military hospital in London.
That's incredible. And what are your other books?
So they're all about medical history or social history. They're all true stories, but I write them in a novelistic style, hopefully, sort of page-turning style. So I've written a book called Wedlock, which was quite a bestseller, about a woman who was tricked into marriage by a fortune hunter in the 18th century. So, lots of amazing stories, I think.
And have you got plans for another one, or are you having a rest now?
Well, I am working on another idea, but it's a bit too early to give anything away at the moment. So I think people have to watch this space. Okay,
well, keep us posted, and then we'd love to interview you again. But as far as this book's concerned, as always, we're selling it on our website, TRE.radio. Our listeners just need to click on the virtual bookshop banner. It's called Jack and Eve, 2 Suffragettes in Love and at War, and it's by the author Wendy Moore, who we're chatting to now. Wendy, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you, Selina. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you.
My pleasure. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye.